welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly fascinating historical puzzle. We're going to explore exactly how, throughout history, vast, abstract concepts, like entire nations, were actually transformed into tangible, recognizable people. It's a brilliant visual trick, really, and it completely changed how everyday citizens viewed their own countries. So let's break down exactly how visualizing the nation actually worked. Put yourself in the shoes of an artist for a second. If you're commissioned to paint a portrait of a king or a queen, well, that's pretty easy, right? You have a physical person sitting right there in front of you. But how do you capture the abstract concept of an entire country? A nation isn't a person with a face. It's a collection of borders, laws, and millions of incredibly diverse people. So how on earth do you give a face to something that doesn't actually have one? Well, the solution artists came up with back in the 18th and 19th centuries was incredibly clever. They decided to literally personify the nation. Basically, they represented the country as if it were a living person. And specifically, they almost always chose to use female figures. Now, what's really important to catch here is that the female form they painted didn't stand for any real-life specific woman. Instead, it was a totally deliberate artistic choice just to give the abstract idea of the nation a concrete, visible form. To really grasp how this works, we need to quickly define a crucial art history term: allegory. An allegory is simply when an abstract idea, like freedom or greed or, in our case, a whole nation, is expressed through a person or a physical thing. So these female figures we're talking about, they weren't just pretty pictures. They were powerful allegories. They were basically entire symbolic stories packed into a single image designed to instantly communicate a shared national identity to the masses. To see where this visual trick really took off, we have to rewind to the French Revolution. This was when artists first popularized using female allegories and very specific symbols to portray grand revolutionary ideals. For example, the abstract concept of liberty was represented by a female figure holding a red cap or a broken chain. Justice, she was depicted as a blindfolded woman holding weighing scales. The concept of the republic itself was shown through these highly recognizable objects. Artists literally trained the public to read these images like a book. Let's look at our first major example, Marianne, representing the French Republic. To give their newly formed republic a face, the French chose a very popular, everyday Christian name, Marianne. And this wasn't random. It was a deliberate choice to underline the idea that France was now a people's nation, and absolutely not just a kingdom belonging to out-of-touch royals. Now, Marianne's specific visual characteristics didn't just come out of thin air. They were drawn directly from those earlier French Revolution allegories we just talked about. She wore the red cap of liberty, she was draped in the revolutionary tricolor flag, and she sported the cockade, which is basically a knot of ribbons worn on a hat as a political badge. When a French citizen saw those items on a female figure, they instantly knew, without a doubt, they were looking at the embodiment of their republic. But creating this allegory was only step one. The real genius was how the French state masterfully integrated Marianne into the daily lives of the people to cement national unity. They did this in 3 key steps. First, they erected huge statues of her in prominent public squares. Second, they actively persuaded citizens to identify with her as their shared symbol. And third, and honestly, this is the most effective part, they stamped her image on everyday items, like coins and postage stamps. Every single time you bought a loaf of bread or mailed a letter, Marianne was right there, constantly reminding you of your shared national identity. Now let's pivot and look at Germania, the German heroine. While she serves the exact same fundamental purpose as Marianne, putting a face to a nation, Germania was designed to represent a much more martial, aggressive set of national ideals. Just take a really close look at this painting from 1860 by Lorenz Classen. It's titled Germania Guarding the Rhine. Notice her imposing posture. I mean, she isn't a civilian figure like Marianne at all. She is heavily armored, alert, and deeply intense. Literally every brushstroke in this painting is designed to project immense strength and military readiness. And check out the specific crown she's wearing. Those oak leaves, they aren't just there for decorative flair. In German visual tradition, the German oak specifically stands for heroism. By placing that crown on her head, the artist is explicitly telling the viewer that the German nation is defined by its heroic, unwavering spirit. When we put Marianne and Germania side by side like this, the contrast is kind of wild. France's core ideal was the people's nation, rooted in liberty and the republic, and you see that symbolized by the red cap. Germany's core ideal, on the other hand, was heroism and strength, rooted in martial defense, which is perfectly symbolized by those oak leaves and the armor. It's a brilliant visual summary of two very different national psyches from that era. Going back to Germania for a second, pay special attention to her drawn sword, totally ready for battle. This directly reflects a highly turbulent period in history. During the latter half of the 19th century, European nationalism was shifting rapidly away from those idealistic, liberal democratic sentiments and was becoming much more aggressive, intolerant, and heavily militarized. The artist actually made this aggressive stance undeniable. If you look closely, inscribed directly onto Germania's sword is this dramatic quote: "The German sword protects the German Rhine." This is a literal masterclass in how nationalist sentiment and allegorical art were actively weaponized to claim territory, define borders, and rally the public for potential war. At this point, it's not just a picture anymore, it's a political weapon. Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand that these allegories were not frozen in time. They were living, breathing symbols. Artists constantly updated Germania to reflect the turbulent historical events of their specific moments. In earlier, more hopeful times, an artist might have painted Germania as standing near broken chains, symbolizing a newly found freedom. Later, maybe after a harsh political defeat, another artist might paint a tragic, fallen Germania. And as we just saw, by 1860, she was standing tall with a drawn sword. The art shifted right alongside the politics of the day. While we've spent our time today focusing heavily on Marianne and Germania as our prime European case studies, it is vital to recognize that this wasn't just a European trend. It became a massive global phenomenon. The powerful idea of using visual arts, pictures, posters, statues, and even music to visualize a nation and rally its people spread all over the globe. Different societies everywhere began developing their own specific allegories and symbols to organize themselves into distinct nation-states. Which brings us to a final provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. What are the nationalist symbols and allegories of your own country? Seriously, next time you hold a coin, buy a postage stamp, or walk past a public statue in your hometown, take a much closer look. Try to decode the visual language being used, because once you understand how national identity is visually constructed, I promise you, you'll start seeing it absolutely everywhere. Thanks for joining me on this visual journey, and keep learning.